and we are so excited to give you a warm welcome. This is our first webinar, and we are so excited that you have decided to join us. This program is put forth through our tutoring and mentoring program called STARS. Probably you guys received the invitation, have seen it on Facebook. And this is a program that is an outreach to the community to help the children in our communities to learn how to read. So we are so excited today because you are here with us. So we want to start with a word of prayer. And after that, Colette is going to introduce our speaker. And I hope that you guys have taken your notes and just have your pen ready to take notes. This is going to be available as well. As soon as we finish, we're going to send to all those who register, we're going to send you a link where you can have a copy of this webinar so you can play it as many times as you need it. So thank you again for being with us, and we are ready to begin. Father God, thank you for your blessing. Bless us as we start this time together and help us to learn so we can help the children that we are in contact with to be the better of themselves and we can assist them in achieving the goals that you have for them. It's in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Gladys. And I want to let the attendees know that the Q&A is there for you. So there will be a couple breaks in the middle and at the end where our speaker will take some time to answer your questions too. So go ahead and put those in as we go. You can add in your questions and we will look at those as we are able to. And at this point, I am just so excited to be able to introduce to you Beverly Solacek. It is such a privilege to introduce her today. Beverly, um, hang on. There, she has her doctorate in nursing practice with an expertise in psychiatric nursing. And not only does she have that book knowledge about our topic today, but she also has extensive practical experience through her private counseling practice, working with people in the areas of trauma, addiction, abuse, dysfunctional family relationships, emotional problems, and financial difficulties. So, what a diverse background of working with so many people and hearing how trauma affects them in so many different areas. Beverly serves as a clinical director of Into His Rest Ministries, which is a Christian counseling ministry where she conducts extensive weekend retreats with groups of women around the country. And she speaks at conferences and she writes. Her work sometimes blends with her husband David's as well. Has a social work background, and together they have written a book entitled Cleansing the Sanctuary of the Heart, Tools for Emotional Healing. And I trust that you will find that when Beverly speaks, she is transparent about her healing journey and invites the courageous to join her in God's work of restoration and cleansing that sanctuary of our hearts. And Beverly summarizes her life mission through the text of Luke 4, verses 18. And it says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and the regaining of sight to the blind, to set free those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And with that, I think that gives you some insight into who Beverly is and what she has to offer today. So with that, I'm going to turn our time over to you, Bev.
Thank you so much, Colette. I appreciate this opportunity to be a part of this. I am retired, but I'm I'm passionate about this subject. And so I'm glad to be able to present, even in my retirement phase of life, to share these wonderful truths and this knowledge that has certainly impacted my life as well as those who I have shared it with. At this point, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get started. Okay, we practiced all of this a few minutes ago. Now let's see if we can get going here. Okay. The title of our workshop again is Changing One Brain at a Time. And it really is important to understand how we are all connected. We are a community, not only a community of believers, but a community of humanity. And so as we begin this discussion today, I certainly want to acknowledge and appreciate God's wisdom in providing us with community in which to grow together. By the end of the session, I'm hoping that you will be able to identify three causes of trauma, identify responses generated from trauma, and name at least three parenting strategies that can have a positive impact on the growing child. And it is certainly important to begin with a definition of trauma. What is trauma? I know years ago when I was in school, we just thought trauma happened on the battlefield, or if there was one event that happened, we considered, okay, that could be a trauma experience. But our knowledge base has grown considerably, and our definition of trauma has grown considerably as well. Trauma is defined as an event that overwhelms the central nervous system, altering the way we process and recall memories. And I want to emphasize how this definition, altering the way we process and recall memories. Oftentimes we think trauma is something that happened to us maybe back in the past, or in a recent past, or in our distant past. But we know that trauma is, I love this definition. And this gentleman, Dr. Van de Kolk, is the expert on trauma and first wrote about it in a reasonable manner where the average layperson can understand it. And he says trauma is not the story of something that happened back then. It is the current imprint of that pain, horror, and fear living inside of people. And so it is that current imprint, very, very important to understand. Trauma happens with two pieces. An individual will experience trauma when two elements are present. First of all, helplessness, the inability to use your voice or move your body in such a way to make the awful things stop happening. And so if I'm unable to move, to use my voice, to yell, scream, and ask for help, or I can't move my body, that helplessness will certainly be a fuel for trauma. And then this is the second point that I think is just as powerful, and it is abandonment by potentially protective caregivers. And what do I mean by that? I mean the idea that people who are supposed to protect me have not done a good job of that. In fact, they have abandoned me to this helplessness. They have somehow not seen my distress, or they have ignored my distress. And so this abandonment, being left alone, is very, very distressing for a child. In fact, being abandoned as a child is tantamount to death. If I am all alone in my distress, it is like dying, so to speak. And so it is a very, very awful experience to have, the helplessness and then the abandonment by our caregivers. There are several types of trauma, one being what we call big T trauma, and that is war, disaster, sexual abuse, witnessing death, domestic violence, crime. And I would ask what we're witnessing with the invasion of ICE in our cities and how they're going about the business of rounding up individuals. That is traumatic. I don't know about you, but I cannot tolerate watching that for any length of time. Have to turn away, turn that's traumatic, and I really want to emphasize that. Little T trauma is where we have been perhaps emotionally abused. We've been called out of our names. We have been neglected. Our basic needs have been neglected. We've sustained losses, and losses can show up on a continuum in a variety of ways. Losing your favorite doll or your favorite bicycle for a child, that's a significant loss. Being bullied at school, failure experiences, having to move abruptly, repeated criticism, spiritual or religious trauma. Those are what we consider little t traumas. It's important to note trauma does affect our bodies, and I'm going to just run through this because I really want to get to how trauma affects our brains and how we respond that way, because I think you will be able to relate to this. You are all familiar with the stress hormone cortisol. So when we experience stress, it could be positive, it could be stress that we can tolerate, or it can be toxic stress, i.e., being having things like that little t happening to us. Those are toxic stress components. And then there are stages of this stress response where there's alarm, our body is alarmed, it goes on high alert, and if we can't escape, we seek to do resistance, and then we experience fatigue and exhaustion. And I think it's really, really important to note again the hippocampus, that's the midbrain, that's located in the midbrain. It signals, I'm sorry, the amygdala and the hippocampus. The amygdala signals to the hippocampus to release this stress hormone. What's important about that is that cortisol, it takes 12 hours for cortisol to break down in our bodies. And so, if you are living in a constant state of stress, you are living in a state where you're being called names, or parents are fighting, or you are in an environment, home environment, or neighborhood environment that is unsafe, and this stress is constantly dumped into your system, the body never gets a chance to break it down, and hence develop symptoms, physical symptoms, as a result of this cortisol floating around in our bodies. When the amygdala says there's danger and alerts the hippocampus to release this cortisol, we have several ways of responding. We either fight, we're backed up in a corner, we're going to fight our way out, we're going to run, we're going to freeze, be immobilized. Our bodies will be unable to move, or what sometimes happens, especially in a situation where it appears to be life-threatening, a person can fawn over the person who is providing or expressing or giving us the sense of danger. We fawn and we try to win them over, that kind of thing. So those are responses that happens when that cortisol is released in our bodies. But when we have a lot of cortisol and the body is unable to break it down, you have this experience. You wake up in the morning, your parents are fighting, you get this cortisol dump, and then you go to school, you get bullied at school, another cortisol dump, and your body never gets to release, to break down this cortisol. And hence, there can be physical symptoms that will happen as a result of that. You can have high blood pressure. We're going to talk about the physical symptoms a little later in our discussion about the physical symptoms that show up when that cortisol is unable to be broken down and released from the body. But I want to talk, and we're talking to people who are working with children, and that's a great thing. But I want to talk to you and your little child now as we talk about trauma. And I think as we walk through this part, you will all be able to relate to this. So remember, one of the definition is the inability to store memories as effectively as we ought to when we have trauma. In other words, the ability is diminished when a person experiences trauma. So there are two types of memory. There's explicit memory and implicit memory. Now, let me give you an example of explicit memory. Explicit memories are those that can easily be recalled. So if I ask you, what did you have for breakfast this morning? You would be able to say, oh, I had pancakes and stripples and eggs or scrambled tofu. You would be able to tell me. Or what you had last week, in many instances, we'll be able to say, oh, yeah, I had for lunch, I had this great lunch at Kava's and it was great. The food was great. I totally enjoyed it. And you'll be able to tell me that's an explicit memory. It's easily recalled. And we all have those, except as we grow older, we have difficulty recalling those explicit memories, but we all have explicit memories. Very, very important to do. Implicit memories are also very important. Implicit memory is a type of memory in which previous experience aid in the performance of a task without conscious awareness of these previous experiences. Let me give you an example again. Um, when you first learned how to ride a bicycle, you had to think through every step. You had to hold on to the handlebars. Somebody was holding your seat, and they talked you through how to pedal on that bicycle. Make sure you do this, and they told you how to handle, how to balance yourself on the bicycle. And so there was this conscious process of every step that was required to learn to ride a bicycle. And you keep practicing it and practicing and practicing. And pretty soon you develop muscle memory. You know how to get on a bicycle and you automatically just start pedaling and you can just ride a bicycle without thinking. And you may not ride a bicycle for a long period of time. And then all of a sudden you have opportunity to get on a bike and you don't have to start at the beginning again. You don't have to say, oh, I got to sit on the bicycle this way and do. Nope. You just automatically do it. It's implicitly stored and you can automatically do it. There are no questions about it. It's as though that past event of learning how to do it is now engaged and you're doing it now in the present. So explicit is being able to recall very easily. Implicit memory, we don't have to recall it. It's just stored in the brain. Explicit and implicit memories both impact feelings, beliefs, and behaviors. So, I had a great breakfast this morning, and so just thinking about my breakfast, I just have just warm, fuzzy feelings. It was great. I enjoyed whatever I had, and I just feel really great about it. And when I think about learning to ride a bicycle, it was great. I can ride a bicycle, and or if I fail to learn to ride a bicycle, I'm going to say, "Oh my word, I couldn't ride a bicycle, or I couldn't learn to swim, or whatever it is that you couldn't do." It's going to evoke some feelings, beliefs, and behaviors that will automatically show up as it relates to, for sure, those implicit memories. Now, I want to talk about something very important, and this is the part where you as individuals who want to care for children, I want you to think about this for yourself. And then as we then apply this information to children, it will make more sense if you can apply it to yourself first, okay? Fragmentation in memories. Fragmentation is a big word. I'm going to explain that in a minute. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, and I so have appreciated and really learned to love God even more as I understand how fearfully and wonderfully I am made and how He works with that, not do this magical thing to uh, heal me of my trauma or to automatically erase my memories. That's not what he does, and I'm really grateful for that. And so when we encounter an experience, the brain records memories in various parts in various locations, right? And I'm just going to talk about 5 locations today. And I'm not going to name what specific brain part. What I'm going to tell you is thoughts are registered in one part of the brain. Your feelings about the experience is registered in another part of the brain. The physical sensations you had during the experience is registered in one spot. The bodily inclinations you felt during the experience is stored in another spot. And finally, the visual images of what you saw during the experience is all stored in different parts of the body. We used to think very simplistically. We had a memory and we could just go to the brain, pull out the file drawer, and out would pop the memory. Well, now with the advances in neuroscience and understanding brain imagery, we now see that various parts of the brain lights up as memories are experienced. And I just find this so fascinating and so helpful. And so here's this picture for you to look at and to understand. Here it is where uh, again, this is in no particular order. This is not right or wrong, but this is where each of these experiences is recorded in different areas of the brain, all at the same time. So let me give you a story. I am a 5-year old. This is a hypothetical situation. I'm in the park, and I'm in the park with my mom, and she got caught up in a conversation with other parents there who are caring for their kids, and they're playing. And I am deathly afraid of dogs. And all of a sudden, I see a dog winding his way toward me. And I now see this dog and the physical sensations I have about seeing this dog, i.e., my fear is registered in one spot in my body. If it's in my chest or if it's in my stomach or in my shoulders, those feelings, I'm sorry, the sensations, the tightness is stored in one place. My thoughts about this dog coming toward me. This dog is coming toward me and he's going to bite me. My thoughts about being bitten by a dog is stored in another part of my brain. My feelings about this, I am deathly afraid, is stored in another part of this of my brain as this dog runs toward me. The bodily inclination is stored in another spot. In other words, I want to run. Remember, we talked about the fight, flight, freeze. I want to run, or do I want to stay there because I'm immobilized? That bodily inclination is stored in another part. And now I see the dog, and my belief that the dog is going to bite me, I see these big canine teeth, and I know these big teeth are going to come and they're going to bite me. And so the visual of this dog running toward me, I now have all of these pieces happening and stored at the same time in my brain. I'm scared to death, but this is what I'm seeing. Now, in order to have brain health, that simply means integration, and that means all parts of our brains being connected. Not just one part, but all parts of my brain being connected. In a non-threatening experience, these memories connect and form a narrative. So if you ask me what was I doing on Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon, I could tell you I was in the park playing and I had a good time with my friends. That's a non-threatening experience. And so I can tell you that it was fun sliding down the slide. It was great. And so that's my narrative. Mommy took me to the park and we had a good time, and I can repeat that story to dad or my siblings or anybody else. When we experience trauma, however, the overwhelming experience becomes fragmented, so our ability to connect the emotions, sounds, images, thoughts, and physical sensations related to the trauma are left disconnected. In that disconnected state, these fragments are unable to form a narrative that we can understand and repeat to somebody. Okay? So I want to make sure we get this. One part of that memory may be activated just just because. So I grow up. Let me back up. I grow up. I've forgotten all about this story. And I grow up, and I just feel I see a dog, and I'm automatically afraid. I automatically revert back to being 5 years old in the park, and I have no idea why. And I don't even know why I'm five. I don't even know why I feel like a little kid here, right? So, but let me take you back to being five in the park. I'm back five in the park. Mommy recognizes, sees the dog coming toward me. She knows my fear of dogs. She sees that. She runs over and she scoops me up and she offers assurance. Now, if my mother is wise and attuned to me, she will say, "Oh, baby, I'm so sorry." And she will give me an opportunity to tell her the story or repeat the narrative of that experience. So then I can collect all of the fragments and create a narrative. I can say, Mommy, I was so afraid. I saw that dog running toward me, and I couldn't run. I didn't know what to do. And his teeth looked really big. And I was so afraid. And I had a stomach ache all of a sudden. Now, all of those fragments are now pulled together in a story that I can tell and repeat to my mother and repeat to anybody who asks me. If my mother comes to me, she catches me, pulls me up, and instead of comforting me or instead of providing me an opportunity to pull these fragments together, she starts berating me. I told you not to leave my side. Why did you leave my side? That dog could have bitten you, and that would have been terrible. And how would I have explained that to your dad? He would have been really upset. And so now, in addition to the experience, I am now, remember, we talked about the helplessness, and now I am abandoned by the caregiver who should have been there to support me. My caregiver is telling me I've done something wrong. And so now I am unable to pull the fragments together and create a narrative that I can share with someone else. And so now I grow up and I see a dog, as I mentioned earlier. I see a dog, and I just feel my heart palpitates, and I feel some kind of way. I don't even know why I'm feeling this way. I This dog, that's a little Shih Tzu. That dog is not going to bite anybody, but I have all of this anxiety and these feelings of fear that show up, and I don't even know why. Or I wake up in the morning and I am totally feeling panicky and I have no idea why. And so, what happens in this case is those fragments get triggered without the context of a narrative to help me to understand what happened in the first place. And so, my present day reaction is exaggerated. And I have no past narrative in which to connect my current exaggerated reaction. Let me give you an example. I'm driving in down the freeway and somebody cuts me off. And I absolutely lose my mind. I want to cuss them out. And if I'm a good Christian, I'm going to give them a good Christian cussing out. But I'm going to get, and I mean, I am just furious at how they just cut me off. What were they thinking? They just cut me off. They could have caused an accident. We probably have seen many TikTok videos where people have just lost their minds because someone has cut them off. When you think about it, when you look at those experiences, that surely is an exaggerated response over being cut off in traffic. Or our kids maybe spill milk on the table and we lose our minds. We start screaming and yelling and we have no idea why we do that. What I want to propose to you is that that's a fragment of part of our story that has been triggered, and we don't have a narrative in which to understand that trigger. And let me give you an example from my own life. My dad always suggested that we move, and I moved every 2 years when I was a little girl. And then my dad was a gambler, and then he would come home. He would be gone for a couple of days gambling, and then he would come home to sleep, clean up, and eat, and go back out. And he would say, "Well, why aren't these boxes unpacked? I don't understand why these boxes aren't unpacked." And I remember thinking on many occasions, "Well, you didn't lift the box to pack the, you didn't lift a finger to pack the box." You didn't lift a finger to move the box, and I don't understand why you would ask and about the boxes. Fast forward to getting married to David. We now have a little family. We live on 30 acres in the woods, and we had a little health clinic to help people. And every Friday, David, who grew up on a farm, loved the outdoors, would make sure our yard was immaculate, and we had wood to chop because we had wood burner. And I would be in the house, and I would be, we had a little baby, and I would be in the house frantically cleaning up and getting things together on the inside and preparing dinner. And David would walk in the house an hour before sunset, and he would ask me, why are you running around like a chicken with your head cut off? It's time for us to sit down on Sabbath. And I would lose it. And we would argue every Friday night. And we had a worker who was such a sweetheart. We're still friends today. And she said to me, "Do you realize that you and David fight every Friday?" And I hadn't made that connection at all. And sure enough, as David and I began to talk about it, and I began telling him how I felt about him coming in the house and saying, why aren't you ready to sit down? I've been working all this time to get ready, and I'm not ready. And you walks in the house, and I don't know what you've been doing. And David would say, well, I was out doing the yard work and cutting wood and getting ready for the Sabbath that way, but it didn't register. I was just beside myself because I was being triggered not by a present situation, but by my little girl feeling so offended that my dad would do that. And here I am as an adult being triggered because that memory had not been put together, that fragment had not been put together in a story that I could relate to. And once I understood what that reaction was about, then it lost its power over me. It's like, oh, that's why I do that. I can see that. And I needed to move to forgive my father, and that was some deeper work to do. But I could understand now why I'm reacting to my husband. And it seemed like it was present for today, but it wasn't. It was yesterday's fragment that had not been put together in a narrative that I could relate to. And each fragment, as clearly as I mentioned, it can take a life of its own. And I already just explained all that. So, how do you integrate this? What's the work that needs to happen? And I'm going to walk through this because we're talking about children, but as you are working with children, you need to understand yourself first. I know for me, as I have been working with people now for many a year, I needed to do my own work before I could really be effective with people who came to see me. If somebody came to see me and I hadn't done the work, I was not effective at helping them in their work. If they came in wanting to talk about daddy issues and I hadn't addressed my daddy issues yet, I couldn't really be helpful to them. And so, what this is a little a few steps that I'd like to suggest now. I hope as we have been talking and you have seen, or God in His mercy has brought up experiences for you that you can see, oh man, this is why, this is an, oh, anytime you have an exaggerated response, you can just know that that's a fragment that has been triggered and it needs to be addressed. A real common one before I go to the solution, people who have panic attacks. So people walk in my door and they say, I'm having panic attacks, give me medication so I can get through this. And I would, of course, say, well, hold on now, let's talk. Tell me about growing up. And then they would start talking to me and telling me about their years growing up. And they would tell me about their experiences with their parents. And I began to identify areas where they had not had somebody to help them to pull their narrative together. And these fragments have been triggered. And again, a panic attack is an example exaggerated response of anxiety, an exaggerated response. I'm out of control. I am going to, something terrible is going to happen to me. That's exaggerated. And rather than medicating, and there are times when medications are in order, so that's not what I'm talking about. I had to medicate some people because their anxiety was such that it was required. But once they got their anxiety under wraps, then we would start talking about these fragments that had been triggered, and then begin to help them to see. This is the step that help them to see where did they begin, where did they first have these experiences. And I always suggest that we start with prayer. The Spirit of God knows our stories backwards and forwards, right? And so I would always ask people, hey, let's start with prayer. Let's ask on, look at that response. You lost it with this kid, your daughter, and she's 6 and she's being just a 6-year old. How in the world did you lose that? And what was going on? What happened for you at 6? Did somebody do that to you? And then I would ask them to sit down and write with pen and paper in prayer and asking, where those, what story, what part of my story that I have the first time I felt these emotions, and ask the Spirit of God to help me to get in touch with that. That was the first step. And then the second step is share with someone you trust and ask them for their feelings about your story. What do I mean by that? Great advances in neuropsychology have been made, and what we've learned is that when the amygdala says there's danger and it tells the hippocampus to dump that cortisol in the system, if another brain comes alongside me and says, wait a minute, yeah, you may think you're in danger, but you're not in danger. Look, wait a minute. So many times my husband has, walked me through, wait a minute, I'm in a tube in London and it's going to stop and I'm not going to have a way out. And he would, no, sweetheart, I'm right here with you. You're safe. You're okay. And so we know that we need another brain to come alongside us to help us to modulate our amygdala and our hippocampus. We know that. And there are times when we think, well, this happened to me. What's the big deal? And when you share your story with someone else and someone else says, wow, that is a painful story. Wow, that happened to you. That is, I am so sorry it happened to you. And they began to tell you their feelings about your story. It now gives you a perspective. Maybe you didn't deem it as all that bad because we know how to minimize and discount our stories very effectively. But someone else says, hey, that's terrible what happened to you. Who did that to you and what were they thinking? And seeing and hearing people's reaction, we all need an empathic witness, is what the literature refers to, someone coming alongside us and says, that's a horrible experience. And we need somebody to come alongside us and validate our feelings. We need somebody to say, yeah, you were abandoned. Yes, this really did feel like your parents didn't see you. It was awful. I remember a story where a young girl was left at a gas station. Her parents pulled off. They took a bathroom break and they got in the car and she was left at the gas station and they're bouncing down the road and they didn't miss her for a half hour, 45 minutes. And for a little girl, that's an eternity. and certainly felt she definitely felt abandoned and all the feelings that goes with that in terms of feeling fear and unloved and panic, all of the feelings that happened to come up. She felt all of them. They came back and got her, but the damage had been done. And when she told me that story, she was like, ha ha, it was no big deal. They came back and got me. And wait a minute, that was a terrible story. That was a terrible experience for a little girl. And then you could see the reality of that, someone saying, yeah, that really was bad. And it's okay that I feel that it was bad, as opposed to, ha ha ha, it's no big deal, minimizing or discounting it, being able to sit with it. That's an empathic witness. I see you. I experience this as I'm listening to you. And I want you to know that you are not alone in feeling the way you feel. So we need an empathic witness. And it's the Holy Spirit's job for sure to help us to put the pieces together, with the aid of other people so many times. And then there are times when all of a sudden, pieces just fall together. Oh, that's why I do this. I just had one of those experiences last week. Oh, that's why I do this. Thank you, Lord. I didn't make that connection. Thank you for helping me to see that. And so it's His job to help us to see and put those pieces together. Um, this process helps us to connect those disconnected pieces. And now we can have a narrative as to why we're doing what we're doing. The anxiety is diminished. And now we can tell our story more coherently and truthfully. And I am going to momentarily give you an opportunity to ask questions about this, but I really wanted to unpack this slowly. And I wanted to unpack this because you're going to have that opportunity to work with people, work with young kids, and even their families, or you may have your own children, be able to help them and understand your reactions to how you relate to them. And so we always have to start with ourselves to see ourselves first before we can go and help someone else. Oh, here it is now. Okay. So at this time, I'd like to open the floor for comments, questions, and somebody's going to read this to me. Give me some help here.
We are,
Yeah,
Beverly. Thank you so much. That is a rich amount of material to digest and to grapple with, not just for the
that
people
was
that we
powerful.
work with, but even for ourselves. So I'm sure there is a
Yes.
lot going on. What did you hear, Gladys, that stood out to you?
Well, to me, it was just that those reactions, I tend to react, and my husband tells me sometimes, he's like, why do you react like that? And it's like you said, it's like over exaggerated. And I'm thinking, like, whoa, that was a fragmentation that I haven't identified what it is. What is causing me to react like that? A lot to think about, indeed.
Very nice. Very nice. And Beverly, I'm wondering, as you're talking and you're talking about the large T and the little T's, is there anybody who has not experienced trauma?
Oh, listen, I do a talk about um, creation and sin. Sin entered the world. Trauma entered the world with sin. You may not have all of the, on a continuum. Your trauma may not look like my trauma, but because of sin, we all have experienced trauma. All of us.
Of us. And Cassandra is asked in the Q&A, does the inability to store memories also happen with the little T trauma?
Right. Now, if you are in a home where you are emotionally neglected, over and over and over again, that takes a lot of energy to keep yourself under wraps, to try to make sense of your world. I did not get into, I was telling a friend I could pack this seminar with a lot of information. I'm not interested in doing that. I want it to be meaningful. But I think the idea that it takes a lot of energy when you are constantly surveying your environment looking for danger. And so if I'm always looking to find danger, you think kids who are growing up right now, the kids who are on in the ice are hunting them down. Just think the energy it takes to always be hyper alert. And who has time to learn ABCs? Who has time to read when I'm worried if my parents are going to be snatched up and I won't see them again? I don't have energy. I don't have the emotional energy to do that. And so, absolutely, especially if you're getting this trauma over and over and over again, and your nervous system is rewired to, instead of being calm, you have an experience and so I run out in the street and catch the ball, and the car stops before he hits me, and I come back on the side of the street. Phew, that was close. And I'm all right. And so my nervous system gets to be reset. With the small t's, my nervous system never gets to be reset. And so now the reset, instead of being quote unquote normal, is now reset at a higher level. And it takes very little for me to go off and be concerned or fearful, or all of that. And so, yes, absolutely. It can be little t, big T, it doesn't matter.
Oh, wow. We have another question from Alnella MacLeod. She says, how should the mom respond after the child collects the fragments and tells the traumatic story? Would that repeated storytelling to others throughout life be a healthy way to deal with the trigger that occur?
Well, yeah. So when we talk about parenting strategies, we talk about the sense of presence. And so if mom in the playground recognizes that this was a traumatic experience for the child and gives the child an opportunity to pull all these fragments together. Remember, this is happening unconsciously. This is not a conscious process. Give that child opportunity. And if that child needs to tell the story again at dinner and tell the story to daddy and to all the siblings, that needs to be okay, because this child is just trying to make sense of it and pulling it together and strengthen that narrative. Oftentimes we'll say, well, hush now, you done told that story, that's enough, or again, if mom is saying, you had no business leaving my side, and she is perhaps adding more drama to the story as opposed to helping the child to make sense of the story, it's not going to serve the child well. Now, we're talking about the mama, but just think about how many times your parents didn't see you. Let's not go out to the children. Just think how many times your parents didn't see you. Yeah, you didn't get your doll. Suck it up, Beverly. You didn't get the doll you wanted. You got a doll. What's the problem? You got this doll. It's not the one you wanted. Or, what are you crying about? How many of you all heard? I'm going to give you something to cry about, right? And so those are opportunities where a parent could have given the child an opportunity. Uh, Big brother hit me, and well, tell me about it, baby, and allowing the child to tell the story to pull all those pieces together.
Interesting. There's such an element of emotional intelligence there to even be able to identify what emotion you're feeling. That seems like that's going to build that base. That is really fascinating. And from the same listener, she asks, at what point in coming alongside an individual's traumatic experience is it best to try to empower them in rising above or advancing beyond the feeling of helplessness that the fragments produced?
A very good question. See, the problem is we want to say, you talked about this enough, right? I've heard the story. Um, and I think if I listen to somebody and I've heard the story a couple times, I would want to know what's going on that you have to tell it, not that you got to rise above it. Trauma, you don't rise above trauma. You don't rise above being sexually abused. You don't rise above it. It did happen to you. You embrace it, you move through it, but you don't rise above it. And I think we have this idea that, you should be over it by now. Who says? Who gives you the right to say, I should be done grieving? Somebody said to a friend of mine, you still crying about that? Um, her relative died 3 months before. Somebody she was really close to, a cousin, a first cousin, and somebody said, you still crying about that? I was like, are you kidding me? Who gives you the right to say how long I should cry, right? And so there's a difference now. There are people who are stuck in their helplessness. That's another story. That's an entirely different story. But I want to focus on helping us to sit with people first. Let's learn to sit with people, because if we learn to do that, we will know what the next steps are. I've heard this story 10 times now. What are you going to do about it? I've heard it 10 times and I empathize and I've given you suggestions and you haven't moved on it. That's different than saying, I want you to rise above it, right? Here's another piece to consider. We go to church, prayer meeting. I want you to pray for me. I get really upset with my husband a lot. And, I really want the Lord to deliver me. Well, the way the Lord wants to deliver you is to help you to embrace your story. It's not this magical thing he wants to do. So many of us have not grabbed a hold of our stories. We say, leave our stories behind. No, my story is who I am. I want to embody my story, every living part of it, because when I do, I get to see God's grace in every part of my story. I was molested at 3. I had a baby at 14. I can see God's hand in every part of my story. But if I don't want to deal with it, I won't get to see his hand in delivering me. I get passionate about this just in case you couldn't tell.
We have another question from
Yes,
Emmanuel
ma'am.
Lasky, and he's asking, is all trauma bad? Or maybe trauma is part of our growth and overcoming as human beings and Christians.
ALL, all trauma is bad. Remember, it overwhelms the central nervous system. It resets my central nervous system. All trauma is bad. All trauma can be redeemed. That's a different subject. But all trauma is bad.
Interesting. So, if we have all experienced trauma, how do we help other people through our own? I mean, not when I'm dealing with my own, how do I prepare to help other people when it's a part of my own life as well? Does that make sense?
That's a great question. And I would say it this way, back to the solution. I got to see, man, I go to the refrigerator and eat a lot. Why am I eating and I'm not hungry? And so again, I'll get up in prayer meeting and I'll say, I'm trying to do the Daniel fast. That's what we do in January, right? I'm trying to do the Daniel fast and, pray for me because I'm really struggling. And so we want to pick the leaves off the tree, off the branch. And God is saying, I want you to understand what you're trying to feel food. You're trying to fill that hole with food. It's not that you are doing the food. You want to help me. You want me to help you with this. I want to help. I want you to see the whole, and you give me permission to deal with the whole. Okay. And
Mm.
so what I've learned is that I want to be honest in my struggle and say, I'm really struggling with whatever it is. And I don't feel like talking to you today, God. I don't feel like praying today, but I'm so grateful that you are praying for me. I'm so grateful that you have me in the palm of your hands. You never leave me. And he is right here with me. And he will move my heart to get to the place where I will want to pray, but I want to be honest in my struggle. And I would propose that a lot of us have not been honest in our struggle. And it's only in being honest in our struggle that we can give God permission to move.
Beautiful.
Very good. That's powerful. We have Tatiana Guzman Iriarte. She's asking, how can we be a good, empathetic witness?
So, um, you've seen cartoons, or you probably have said it, but you've seen cartoons where I walked to school in the snow, and it didn't kill me, right? And so my kids can get out here and walk in the snow, right? They can do it. I did it. They can do it. That's not an empathic witness. Uh,
Yes,
that's not my kid is saying this is really hard, this is uncomfortable. An empathic witness would say, I see you. That is really hard. It was hard for me when I did it. That's an empathic witness, right? That's
okay.
somebody saying, I see you in your struggle. That's an empathic witness. Well, I got beat within an inch of my life. And so I turned out okay. So I'm going to beat my kids. I turned out okay. And so it's okay for me to do that. Well, no, you didn't turn out okay. You learned that it's okay to lay hands on a small, vulnerable person because somebody laid hands on you. And it's not until you recognize that you have been mistreated, and then you can be an empathic witness to someone else who has been mistreated.
Hmm.
You got to have your story first. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
It
That makes sense.
does.
And
Go ahead.
yes, we have also another question related to that. Elaine is asking, I have four grandkids who live with us. The 13-year-old girl remembers her dad spanking her little sister. And because she would not stop crying, he put her in a cold shower and also listening to her older brother being spanked and screaming and crying when he was around 8 years old. She talked about it and very disturbing to her little sister who had forgotten but did not remember that incident. What can I do? They visit their dad on the weekends, though their mom banned spankings. It's not so chaotic now. So, what can the grandma do to help?
Give the kids opportunity to talk. So the child who heard the spankings, that's what we call secondary trauma. If dad can do that to big brother, if dad can do that I'm to sister and throw her in the shower, I am helpless. And I'm going to do whatever I can do not to have that happen to me. But I couldn't help my sister. I couldn't help my brother. That's secondary trauma. And so helping the kid identify, give them feeling words. That must have been awful to experience that. That I can't even imagine what it felt like for you to hear your brother screaming and you couldn't stop it, and to see your sister be thrown in a cold shower and you couldn't do anything about it. I am so sorry that happened to you. That's being an empathic witness and giving them words, feeling words to describe it. Don't tell them stop. You don't let's not talk about it anymore. And the child may not have remembered, the child who didn't remember and came up. What we know is the body keeps the score. The body remembers.
Mhm.
Even if she didn't remember, the body remembers.
Does. And Beverly, you are sparking a lot of memories in the people, as I'm sure you are accustomed to when you
Yes,
present, that it brings
yes,
up a lot in us.
yes.
Um, I think there's a lot around what you were talking about with where do we begin? And I would like you, this is going to be our last question before we launch back into it, so we make sure that we get through your presentation.
Mhm.
But if you can talk about well, there is one very specific one, but we're going to save it. The the line between where I am as somebody who's coming alongside somebody and when do I need to know my boundary as well? I think there's a lot in here about what do you do when this has happened, where your family won't talk about it, when the people around you won't talk about it. What do people do? And what do I, as an empathetic listener, what are my boundaries?
Good question. First of all, let me answer the simple one first. When I used to teach in a seminary, teach a class for pastoral counseling, and I would say to the pastors, of course, they would be the first line where people would come and talk about their problems. And I would say to them, please, please, please understand that it can be above your pay grade. And so if you hear something and you don't have the skill set, it's okay. And I'm so grateful that in many Adventist circles, we are normalizing pray, but you need a good counselor too.
Yeah,
Okay. And so, please, by all means, find a good counselor and refer that person to a good counselor. And second of all, when you're talking about, I'm in a family where people won't talk about what happened. Um, it's okay if you made an attempt and they won't talk about it, or they made an attempt and they try to discount and minimize your story. That means that that person is not safe, and that's not a person you want to talk to. I know what my story is. I know what my reality is, and that's not a person that you can go and try to get some feedback to with. And so what we look at the family system, and if one person steps out of the dance, we're all doing the cha-cha. If one person steps out of the dance and starts doing the rumba, everybody in the family is doing the cha-cha, gonna try to pull you back to do the rumba. I mean the cha-cha. And you're saying, no, I'm rumba. I'm doing rumba. What's gonna happen of necessity, they're going to have to change their steps. And what we know is one person can change the system and make the system healthier. And so if your family doesn't want to do the work, you press on to do the work. And of necessity, you don't have to go back and say, hey, I really want you to change. Nope. If you're no longer doing the cha cha, they're going to say, well, we got a hole here. We got to do something different. And there's the rumba step, and we got to figure out how to do the rumba step since they're not going to do the cha cha with us.
very interesting. So if you are, and you may have just answered this, but I want to clarify because somebody's saying there was a loss of a child and the family, it's just too painful for everyone, including the other kids. So how do you encourage that storytelling in a way that isn't harmful to the other people who experience the loss as well? So you want to deal with it, but you don't want to if they're not ready to deal with it.
You don't deal with it with them, you deal with it with somebody else. They're not ready.
So,
And that's okay, they're not ready. Um,
very good.
but you have to do what you have to do for yourself.
Very nice. Well, there's more coming in, but we're gonna go ahead and Gladys and I will leave this classroom back to you and let
Okay.
you continue and see what more you have to say, because we could probably do Q&A from this for the rest of the day.
Yes.
We're
Okay.
gonna go ahead and let you continue. Thank you,
Okay.
Bev.
Okay. Okay. Here we go. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about this study. This study was done in the mid 1990s and it's called Adverse Childhood Experiences. And the study was done back in with Kaiser Permanente and the Center for Disease Control. Participants were recruited and they've had long-term follow-up. And what they've discovered and how this study came about was this Dr. Felidi is his name, ran a very successful weight loss clinic. And people were losing weight and they were doing great. And then a couple years later, people returned and wanted to re-enroll in the clinic, and they had regained all of their weight plus more. And he was curious. He was like, this is a head scratcher. What is going on that they've lost weight, they've done fine, and now they're back here later. And so, as he was reviewing a woman who wanted to come back to the study, he inadvertently asked this question. And the question was, when did you have your first sexual encounter? And she said, 4 years old. And he did a double take, 4 years old, and this young woman had been sexually abused, and so her her weight was a buffer to keep men at bay. She was a good-looking woman. It was to keep men at bay. So if she was overweight, they wouldn't find her attractive. And so when she lost weight, it was too anxiety provoking for her. So she regained it plus more. And this caused him to wonder, I wonder what other adverse childhood experiences people in this weight loss clinic had. And so he did this study, and the study has been duplicated well over 150 times. It's the gold standard. It's a great study. And what we've learned from this study has really helped, even in terms of pediatrics. It has influenced how pediatricians work with kids. It has just been fascinating. And what he pulled out, he asked 17,000 participants questions about adverse childhood experiences. And as I go through this list, I want you to be thinking about it again, since you're all in your own little world on Zoom. I want you to look at this list, and see how many of these you answer in the affirmative. The study found that the ACEs are common. For example, 28% of the study participants, remember there were 17,000 people, 28% reported physical abuse, 21% sexual abuse. Many others reported experiencing a divorce or parental separation, or having a parent with mental and or substance abuse disorder. And they also determined that these ACEs often occurred together. So there were very few people who had one ACE, in other words. And so these are the categories of the ACE, and I want you to take the take. That we're supposed to be take the quiz here. Psychological. So this is the first one. This is the very first ACE. And as we go through this, I want you to answer, did you in your family growing up, and again, this is important because remember, we know that the first 7 years of a child's life, their character is set in stone, so to speak, right? We're told that our first 7 years, our character is set. And there is a poem that talked about everything I learned in kindergarten. Well, there's a lot of truth to that. Who we are has been shaped by those first 7 years of life. Did a parent or other adults in your household often swear at or insult or put you down, or often very act in a very way that made you afraid that you would be physically hurt? That's number one. Number two, did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often push, grab, shove, or slap you? Did they often or very often hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? Three, did an adult or a person at least 5 years older ever touch or fondle you in a sexual way? Have you touched their body? Have you touched their body in a sexual way? Attempt oral, anal, or vaginal intercourse with you. Actually have oral, anal, or vaginal intercourse with you. Number 4, live with anyone who was a problem drinker or an alcoholic. Did you live with anyone who used street drugs? Was a household member depressed or mentally ill? And did a household member attempt suicide? Did you live in a house where a mother was treated violently? Was your mother or stepmother sometimes, often, or very often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at her? Sometimes, often, or very often um, kicked, bitten, or hit with a fist or hand or with something hard. Ever repeatedly hit over or at least a few minutes? Ever threatened with or hurt by a knife or gun? Did a household member go to prison? Uh, was it that did you ever have, you didn't have enough to eat or you had to wear dirty clothes? Was there someone who took you to the doctor if you needed to go? Did you know someone did you have someone that would take care of you and protect you? And so it's interesting. My husband did this study with seminarians, and it was a fascinating study. He's written articles in professional magazines or journals about this, and he shared it with the NAD because there were a number of categories where the seminarians scored higher than the national average. And there's a reason for that. We want to go and be helpers, and we want to fix situations that we can't. We want to go back and reparent or refix what we could not change or mitigate as children growing up. And so I would ask you, how many of those questions did you answer yes to? And when my own personal ACE score, I had 7 of these. And so that's pretty high. And so we asked people to consider how many of these did you score? That gives you an idea of your what your adverse childhood experiences were like, regardless of what you say in terms of I grew up. By the way, when I would hear people say, I grew up in a great household, my parents were great, they were wonderful. I always see that as a red flag. And I would say that in a nuanced way because I would say that if you thought your parents were perfect, there were no perfect parents. There have not been any perfect parents. And that meant you didn't see them. I thought my mother was perfect until I was 28 or 29. I thought she was just absolutely wonderful. And if you think about it, let me just drop this gem on you for you to think about. As children growing up, um, we do this magical thinking and we do this splitting, right? And so for me, my father was a jerk. I knew he was a jerk, but my mother was wonderful and I put her on a pedestal. My mother was instrumental in helping me to return to school after I had Eric, and I attribute a lot of my opportunities to succeed in life were based on my mother's efforts to help me. And so she was on a pedestal, and here's my dad. And so what I have seen over and over and over again, the parent you have on a pedestal is the parent you have the greatest issue with. Why? Because you don't see them clearly. And number 2, you put them on a pedestal because it's too anxiety provoking to think you had 2 parents who did not see you, did not meet your needs. And so I have to have one parent who is great. And so I had to put this one parent on a pedestal. And I've seen that over and over and over again. And it's, again, something to think about. You got a perfect parent and you got that splitting. My other parent was awful. My mother or my father was great. Something to think about. Something to think about. And when I took my mother down off the pedestal, by far and away, I had greater issues and greater pain around her than I did about my father. So, this gives you an idea of the stress level of a child who has a number of ACEs. This is just a lot. What is really interesting, the study demonstrates, and it has been documented over and over and over again, that the more ACEs you have as a childhood, the more chronic health problems you have, and it's not so. If you have one or two ACEs or three ACEs, you would have perhaps have some health challenges. But if you had four or more ACEs, that your health challenges would increase significantly. And when I say health challenges, I'm talking about the chronic health patterns, illnesses, high blood pressure, diabetes, uh, overweight, kidney disease. It was fascinating when they did the study, and you could really see it. Alcoholism, COPD, all kinds of issues that results as a result of having these chronic illnesses. Someone asked earlier, is there good trauma? No, there's not good trauma. Remember, the body keeps the score. Even if you don't remember, your body remembers, and it gets played out in your body. These are all study findings, and it has been documented over and over and over again. So we have health classes in our churches. We invite people to come and take these health classes. And if we just focus on make sure you eat right, I want to teach you how to eat right and have a vegetarian diet and all the things, exercise and follow the 10 laws of or the 8 laws of health. Really very important is important areas. However, if you have this trauma that's stored in your body, you have this chronic buildup of cortisol in your body, it's still going to have, excuse me, an impact on your health, whether you can make that connection. And I think that's what this ACE study was so instrumental in doing, is to help us to understand the connection between physical health and emotional health. We're told in inspired writing, for example, 9/10 of all diseases start in the mind. And unfortunately, we have 9/10 of our resources placed in the 1/10 versus helping us to understand that there's a lot going on in this, the 9/10 that we need to really address. And so we know that early adversity lasts for a long time. These things that I just mentioned, there are a lot of things that have happened, having a lasting impact on your life. People who have adverse childhood experiences, this notion that, hey, if you would just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, I did it, you can do it too. But if you have all of these ACEs, having energy to study in school and be successful in school, it really is a challenge. And so it's no wonder that people have difficulty in school. And here's some other ideas that children have in terms of when they have a lot of ACEs. They again, I'm not going to read all of this, but it's here, and I'm certainly going to, as I mentioned, pass this on. You're welcome to have it to review for yourself, and I want you to go back to your churches or to people you're working with and sharing it with people. By the way, I've shared this in non-Christian circles, right? This information about the at what we talked about at the beginning, and people like their faces light up. That's why I do what I do. That's why we're crazy in the world. That's what's happening in the world. That's what happening is happening with these people who are caught up in political upheaval. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. All of these things, and we have no idea that they're connected. And as we are, this is really very important. One of the best scientific predictors for how any child turns out in terms of happiness, academic success, leadership skills, and meaningful relationships is whether at least one adult in their life has consistently shown up for them. Just one. It doesn't have to be a whole plethora, it doesn't have to be a whole family, just one person um, who shows up consistently in their life. Showing up means offering a quality of presence. And this is where I want to go next. This is just okay, come on, baby. And it's simple to provide once you understand the four building blocks of a child's healthy development. Every child needs to feel what Siegel and Bryson call the four S's. Every child need to. We all long for this. You long for this. I long for this. Even now, we all long to be safe, to be seen, and in the seeing, I am soothed and I am secure. I need to know that I'm safe. Um, I recently, in the last 6 or 7 years, I was officially diagnosed being ADHD, and which came first, the chicken or the egg, because of my A scores and what I was going through. I just find that a fascinating question. But here I am, ADHD, did well in school in spite of that. And when I have a group of sisters who see me and they understand that I can start here and end up over here, and they respect me and love me. I feel safe with them. And they can say, Beverly, can you focus? Can you stay right here? We're trying to decide if we're going to go to this restaurant or that restaurant. Can you stay right here? And I feel safe with them, and I also feel seen. I They know that I have ADHD. They know that I struggle sometimes well, not sometimes, a lot of the time to be focused. I feel seen, and I don't feel judged in being seen, and I feel soothed in being seen, and I feel secure. We all need that. Back to our story in the playground. Mom sees, you're safe with me, child. You're safe with me. I see your distress, and I'm going to soothe you. And as a result of that, you can feel secure. As a parent, we cannot always be perfectly present with our kids. Work may interfere, or something else may distract us. But when we do it more consistently than not, our kids learn to what we call have a secure attachment. And children who have secure attachment do well in life. And so everyone needs to feel safe, and then being seen and soothed and secure. Does that make sense? Okay, come on.
Yes, it makes
Okay,
sense.
okay. And we can't always insulate a child from injury or avoid doing something that leads to hurt feelings. But when we give a child a sense of a safe harbor, she will be able to take the needed risk for growth and change. I can remember, wanting to try something big, something to try something new. And my mother told me, no, you can't do that. Nope, nope. And one time she told me, I'll never forget this. She told me I was a little girl. She said, Beverly, everybody's not your friend. And I thought, you mean everybody's not my friend? Well, I'm everybody's friend. What do you mean? But, the message was the world is not safe. And so, helping a child know that they can go out and explore and do different things, but you can come back because you're going to find a safe harbor with me as your mom. To be seen. Truly seeing a child means we pay attention to his emotions, both positive and negative, and strive to attune to what's happening in his mind beneath his behavior. What do we mean by that? We mean by, okay, a child is having a tantrum. What's going on that this child's having a tantrum? I see you, baby. This is really hard. I understand that you really, really don't want to wash dishes right now. I get it. And I understand that you're really mouthy right now. And this must be really hard for you right now. And giving them, I'm attuning with them. This is hard, but you still got to do it. I see you in your distress. And setting boundaries. We don't want our kids to be disrespectful, but how many of us grew up in environments where you couldn't even talk back at all? You can't say anything. But when we can really see our children affirm even their negative feelings and emotions, and if nobody did that for us, I promise you it's going to be really hard for you. But God is the one who wants to affirm us and help us to see that I got you. I see you. I understand where you're coming from. I really am right here with you. Soothe. Soothing isn't about providing a life of ease. It's about teaching your child how to cope when life gets hard and showing him you'll be there with him along the way. A soothed child knows that he'll never have to suffer alone. How soothing is that to know, well, I got somebody on my side who's going to be with me all the time? And then secure. When a child knows she can count on you time and time again to show up, when you reliably provide safety, focus on seeing her and soothing her in times of need, she will trust in the feeling of secure attachment and thrive. Very, very important. Now, if we were to take those four S's, safe, seen, secure, nope, safe, seen, soothed, and secure, and apply them to our relationship with Christ. In fact, one of David's students did her PhD on seeing how in Scripture God provides our secure attachment. He is the one, even in spite of sin, God says, I want you to know that you're safe with me. I see you. I want to soothe you and you are secure with me. And that makes all the difference in the world when we know that we have a Savior who is really right there with us. And so we want to spend our last few minutes together talking about parenting strategies for traumatized children. And I want to start, I put this right at the beginning because I think it's really important to move away from what's wrong with you to what happened to you and then what's right with you. So, how many times we have said this, or you've heard people say in church, what's wrong with her that she's here with these short dresses on? I had a minister's wife to tell me this woman shook my husband's hand and she held on too long and she was really jealous about that. And she decided she was going to shake everybody's hand. She was going to put her hand in front of her husband's hand and to protect him. And gave her the side eye with that, her thinking that was going to work. But my question to her was, have you ever considered to ask what's wrong with this lady that she's flirting with the pastor to what happened to this woman? What if we changed our focus to what's wrong with people to what happened to people? What happened to you that you're acting this way? I know for me, this is not a political seminar at all, but I ask that question all the time when I look at these politicians moving around. I wonder what your story is. I wonder what happened to you that you're functioning at this level. And then moving to the place, what's right with you? And so when our kids are having a tantrum, they're having a bad day, or you're working with kids and they're having a bad day, what happened to you that you're acting this way? And what's right with you? How many kids know what's right with them? A lot of kids know what's wrong with them, but how many kids know what's right with them? We want to build resilience in our children. And resilience is possessing a sense of self-efficacy, a child's belief that he or she can be successful in different areas of life. Having a sense of meaning in one's life, which might include spiritual or cultural beliefs, connections with others, or having goals and dreams. Possessing talents or skills in certain areas, the arts, athletics, or academics, and finally, possessing a variety of adaptive and flexible coping skills that he or she can use in different situations, helping our children know that they don't have to fall apart at the first sign of distress, but there are ways that you can get through the situation without falling apart. That's how we can help build resilience in our children. Now, for many of you, you may be supporting traumatized families. How do you do that? And we said at the beginning that all of us have experienced trauma, not just some of us, but all of us. And then there are situations where children, some families have experienced a lot of trauma. And what we want to do is, first and foremost, you want to establish trust with families. You want to really help them to know, you want to establish, I'm here with you. How many of us go in and we want to have all the answers? I can't tell you how many times I have said, as a counselor and having some tools in my toolkit, I've said, I don't know how to move in this situation, but I know who knows, and that is God. And I just know I can come alongside you. I want to walk this journey with you. I want to be with you. So you want to build trust with families. And sometimes it's not with a lot of words, it's just your presence. Who you are. You are the living epistle to so many people you come in contact with, thanking God for the opportunity to bring grace where there is no grace, to bring love where there is no love. We get to do that. We get to be an oasis of beauty in people's lives. And so building trust, I'm just here with you, right? And if you are working with families, if you have not studied some trauma informed approaches, if you have not learned some trauma informed ways, I would strongly encourage you. There are plenty of resources out there that will show you some things that you can do to help families when they're experiencing a lot of trauma. An example I have is I help people to learn to do something real simple, to breathe, to take some breaths, to pay attention to how deep you can breathe in and breathe out slowly. That's something really simple you can do to help people to pay attention to their bodies. Really, really simple. I ask this question of clients. Tell me, where do you feel stress? Where do you feel it? You feel it in your head, your shoulders, your stomach? Where do you feel it? Where do you when if you haven't exercised or if you've been sitting for a while, you can learn to move. Just get up and move, change positions. That is something you can do. There's some really basic, simple things you can learn. You don't have to be a therapist. You can just learn some simple interventions. Do you know that you can hum when you're stressed? And the longest nerve in the body, the vagus nerve, when you start humming, it has a calming influence on the vagus nerve. That's something simple. That's not hard. Just, teach your kids to hum. Hum, just hum. Let's hum together. Just something really simple. And then finally, collaboration and teamwork. We're in this together. We're going to collaborate. We're going to bring the resources that you need. If you're hungry, I'm not going to talk to you about, how to discipline your kids because your kids are hungry. And so maybe they're acting out because they're hungry. Let's get some food on board first before we start talking about some other things you can do. So starting just collaborating and teamwork, getting a team together that can support a family. And you don't have to be the expert. You don't have to. You just need to know where the resources are in your area. And we have said to so many pastors through the years, make sure that you know the resources in your community. Where can you refer families? You don't have to know, somebody is homeless. You don't have to invite people in your home. Maybe God is calling you to do that, but maybe He's not. Maybe you need to know what the resources are. So just be willing to collaborate with other agencies in your area. And if it's above your pay grade, if you don't know how to do something, it's okay to say, I don't know how to do it. One thing I can tell you, something you desperately need to know how to do is not to do, I should say, is to give people a cognitive solution to an emotional problem. What do I mean by that? We do it all the time. We give people Bible verses when I think I just need a hug. I don't need a Bible verse. I need your presence here with me, hugging me and saying, I see you. Well, God knows. Well, you be God for me right now. So many times we give people Bible verses when that is the very last thing they need. Do not leave this seminar saying that woman said, don't quote the Bible. I did not say that. What I said was you give people solutions or interventions that touch their hearts, not their heads. And so those are points that I just really want to emphasize when you're talking about working with traumatized families. And I think that's it for me. And so at this point, I'm going to stop sharing and open the floor up for questions.
Thank you so much, Beverly. That was powerful. And we're going to go rapidly through the questions since we only have 15 minutes. Uh, we have someone named Gertie. She says that she has a lot of memories coming through her mind as you were speaking. She's part of a family of 12 and we're traumatized every night by parents fighting. The siblings are against talking about this. What should she do?
Um, the kids are against it, so what? She can still talk about it for her. And so if they don't want to talk about it, she can say, this is my story and this is what I remember. And I just want to say that this is, my story. Oh, we don't want to talk about it. Okay. But I want you to know I'm talking to someone who is helping me to kind of process all of this because it was a lot. And I'm sure it impacted you, even if you don't want to talk about it.
Awesome, awesome. Ronnie is saying that now he understands where his overacting is coming from. So where should he start?
Very good. There are some great resources out there. What I will do is I will, as part of, in fact, I usually do this in my PowerPoints. I didn't do it this time. There are great resources out here, podcasts. There are um, books that we can read that help us to understand trauma. And so I have a whole list of resources, and I don't want to take away from our time to do this, but I will list that when I send out the PowerPoint and you send it out to the participants. But you can Google great resources out there. Dan Siegel is a great resource. He's done a lot of practical. He's a psychiatrist. I love his work. I do a podcast. It didn't start with you. What's the name of that podcast? Oh, that's the name of a book. It didn't start with you. Is the name of a book. I'm just trying to think of resources right quick. But go ahead, ask me the next question. I may be able to pull it up.
Yeah, awesome. Also, for all of you who are connected, we are going to send you a copy of her PowerPoint through email, and as well, we are going to send you the recording so you can replay the this webinar as many times as you need to. We have another question from Patricia. She says, "Do the unborn feel trauma in the uterus? A
Oh,
friend's
excellent
father
question.
committed suicide just before her birth, and she feels it impacted her life. So,
Uh,
do the unborn feel trauma?"
Absolutely. And the scriptural evidence for that is remember John the Baptist, when Mary went to Elizabeth, Mary was 6 months pregnant, and that part of John's brain was developed at 6 months, the midbrain, and that's where feelings are developed. And without question, remember, mom is grieving. And so mom and this baby are one. And so mom is grieving this whole process, and this child is awash with mom's grief. And so without question, she is experiencing that.
Wow. Katie is asking, you listed different things about how to build resilience, and you said there were different ways to do so. Can you tell me how? I did not understand how, based on what was on the screen. Whatever the screen was, she said she could not understand. So, how can
Yeah.
she build resilience?
Right. What I said was that, it's important that a kid know like problem solving. I saw this great video of uh, parents who put a bottle on the other side of some tape, and the kid had to get through that tape to get to the bottle. The kid was frustrated, probably 2 years old, 18 months, and they were frustrated, but the kid got through the tape to get the bottle. And that's building resilience. That's problem solving. I'm going to help you. And so when a kid comes in from school and talks about how terrible things are, let's talk about what you can do. How can we manage this? Again, that's something that you can very easily. I want to encourage you as listeners to get educated, start reading, get exposed. You've heard this stuff that's new to you. This is the first time some of you may have heard this. Now get educated. What can you do? Where do I need to go? And who's talking about this? There are podcasts out here now, YouTube videos that talks about resilience. Go on YouTube and do something on YouTube. I have a whole, I mentioned The Body Keeps the Score by Van de Kolk. That's the guy who gave us that great definition. Oh, The Place We Find Ourselves is a podcast that I highly recommend. The Place We Find Ourselves by with Adam Young, and Being Known podcast by Kurt Thompson. Kurt Thompson has written several great books. I've read everything he's written and listened to his podcast. He's a Christian psychiatrist. Great books. I found the resource that I will add to you. Um,
Thank you, Beverly.
yes.
Yes, if you can add those when you send us the information, we will definitely share those. I see that Tash Francis had her hand raised. We are only acknowledging the questions in the chat. So please put your questions on the Q&A and we will get to those. So another question from Anela. She said, what does a counselor do when coming alongside so much hurt and trauma? It becomes overwhelming. How do you prevent yourself from being overwhelmed?
That's a really good question. I would say this, two things. One, when I first started counseling, I was overwhelmed a lot. It was because I hadn't done a lot of my work. But as I began doing my own emotional work, that certainly was mitigated. And second of all, these people who are sitting here, who God brought to me, these are not my burdens to carry. I know who to give them to. And I've heard some really hard stories. Oh my goodness. And I certainly have been triggered by some of the stories that
Yes.
I've heard, but I know who to turn this over to, and that is Jesus. And so I'm very clear. And counselors need counselors. We need somebody to debrief with, to be able to
Yes.
talk through some of the things that we've heard.
Okay, so as a counselor, your suggestion is work through your trauma first, and also when you feel overwhelmed, find somebody safe that you can unload all that emotional weight. Yeah, thank you so much. I have another question. Can you please explain the difference between feeling safe and secure, if there is any difference in those? You said in the four
Right,
S's.
right, right. Secure means, okay, I feel safe in your presence, which engenders in me a sense of security. Uh, I am okay. So the word comes from attachment. I am attached to you. You are someone, it starts with our parents. We develop attachment styles from our parents. And my parent will prove to be safe or unsafe. There are several different attachment styles. You can Google that as well. But the notion that I feel secure internally. I feel secure about my being, about myself. I think that's what I mean when I think of secure. I am secure in myself. I can go out in the world and be myself in the world
Okay.
and be okay with myself.
That's awesome. One of our attendees is wondering about the results of the questions that you had. One said that she scored 4 out of the 10, and others said 8 out of the 10. So, what are the results for the questions?
Right. So again, the point is how many aces did you get? That gives you an
Hmm.
idea of the level of stress that you experience as a child. And so, because I said I had seven, I've had people who've had 10 out of 10. And so that's a
So,
huge amount of
when you
stress.
say ACEs, what are
So
the
adverse childhood
attendee was saying?
experiences. So of the 10 I
Okay,
read, I had seven of the 10 I read. Okay. And so if you
understood.
had four or if you had eight, you've had a lot of stress in your life. And so that gives you an idea of the burden that you are carrying in within. And so you may say, well, I really want to take care of myself. Well, taking care of yourself is to understand that, man, there's some stress that I may still be carrying in my body that I may need to pay attention to. What's my story around these stressors? And we have a lot
Yes.
of grief. I wanted a mother and a father who loved me. I didn't get that. And
Hmm.
so we have a lot of grief around that. And starting that process of grieving, that's huge for us as Christians.
Yes, we have only like 5 minutes left, so I want to make sure that I get to these questions. Why do I always want my mother to come and stay with me After a few months, I get angry with her that she never stood up for me as a child.
Okay, okay. So these questions that are coming up are worthy of wrestling with, right? And so
Yes.
I felt the same way in terms of uh I considered uh, I loved my mother. In fact, I was really enmeshed with my mother, and I wanted to be around her all the time. I felt her feelings, but I was angry with her. And so you need to address your anger. What were you angry about? And this is just
Yes.
generic for everybody. So when you look at what you really feel, I'm not supposed to, we don't care about what you're not supposed to feel. We're wanting to address what the truth is about your heart. I am angry with her. And what are you angry about? And people say, well, that's the past. There's nothing I can do about it, except you're still feeling it. And that's not how you
Yes.
get rid of it by saying, oh, well, there's nothing I can do about it. The truth is, you still feel it. It's a matter of looking at it, embracing it, grieving what you didn't get from your mother or your father, and forgiving them. That's the nutshell process.
Yes, thank you. Also, Tash wants to know once we share the PowerPoint with them, if they can share it with their church, with your
Oh,
permission.
absolutely. I promised I want them to do that. Promise me they will.
Yes, thank you. Also, Tash is suggesting What Happened to You by Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. She says it's a good resource and
Yes.
it has audiobooks, so you can access that if
Yeah.
you're interested. Also, we have a question. Who can you trust when your trust is broken by someone you trusted?
Yeah. So, and again, I'm just doing this real quick, 30 seconds. What we learn to do is we trust people who can't be trusted. And then when they show us that they can't be trusted, then we run back the other way and say, oh, I'm not going to trust anybody anymore. And I'm not going to do it anymore. And then we forget that because it gets lonely over here. And then we start trusting people and blow past all the flags that say they shouldn't be trusted. And then they hurt us again. And then we go back over there again. And so, again, as Christians, we get to ask God. God says he places the solitary in families. God, who do you want me to trust? And trust is earned. You're looking to see,
Yes.
okay, now I told them a little bit and they're cool. They didn't violate my trust. Tell them a little bit more. They didn't violate my trust. Okay. And so, Lord, can I
I can
trust this
trust.
person?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel, with our last question. What to do and how to help people who use and abuse church prayer meetings as a therapy group, sharing again and again same traumatic story while denying professional attention from a therapist or counselor.
Well,
That's a good
again,
one.
those are people. A great question. Those are people who we call them yes butters. They help. They ask for help, reject the help, and then complain. And so, yeah, then
Yes.
you say to them outside of prayer meeting, now you've been here, you've told this story 10 times, and people have tried to give you some help, you don't want it. And so when you do it again, we're going to cut you off. That's not being mean. That's called a boundary.
Yes.
We're just not going that it's not helpful. And so we tried to help you. You don't want it. And it's beyond the scope of this prayer meeting. And you need to seek professional help. That is absolutely right, because that's toxic.
Well, thank you so much, Beverly. We have come to the end of our time. The time just flew by so fast. Thank you again for all of you who joined us. Thank you for being with us. We want to let you know that we are going to have more of these webinars and you are invited to come and join us.